Greetings, Dennis Fair, retired member of the Metropolitan Police Department of Washington, D.C. Served 29 years straight, non-stop. Retired June the 8th of 2019. And I'm going to discuss, let me say this also. The opinions and the statements that I make are entirely mine. I'm not affiliated with any law enforcement agency. So for anything, for the most part, that you hear me say is entirely my opinion based on my experience, and it's just my opinion. I wanted to talk about the Kim Porter case. That is the female who mistakenly drew her service weapon instead of her taser and ended up shooting an individual. It's a Minnesota police officer and killing him during a traffic stop. A lot of individuals were asking, or a lot of individuals were actually commenting, stating just, she meant to do it, and it was intent. That's not the case. Now, negligence, poor training, likely those things played a role. However, the intent, that individual did not have the intent on killing an individual or drawing that service weapon purposely to throw her livelihood away on video in the presence of other officers, and also the individual's girlfriend was present also. So it's not a situation where there was intent. That's just not the case. Negligence and lack of training, likely those things played a role in it. Obviously the taser is not issued to officers of the Metropolitan Police Department here in D.C. They are issued to their sergeants, and most of the time in those situations, they obviously feel that they want to try it with the sergeants or give it to the officials and see how it works out with them. And if that works out, then maybe they will issue them to officers. But when I was there, they didn't have them issued to officers, and that might be a good thing. It might be a bad thing. However, the situation with the Kim Porter case in Minnesota, this is a situation where she somehow mistakenly drew her service weapon and fired that service weapon instead of her taser. Now, of course, if you listen to the video, you hear her scream, "Taser, taser." I don't know what that's about. Maybe that's something that they are actually part of their training. They're trained to do. If they're getting ready to tase somebody, that means likely to alert the other officers not to touch, because if you're touching an individual when they're tased, guess what? You're going to be tased too. You're going to feel that electric charge as well. So maybe that's a particular case, but in that particular case, a lot of people were asking, how could that happen? Obviously, the Glock is not the same size, doesn't weigh the same as the taser, which is true. This is a taser that's not even on your right side. If you're right-handed, for example, or it's not on your left side, it's not on the same side as your dominant hand. If you are right-handed, it's going to be on your left side, meaning the taser. If you're left-handed, your service weapon is going to be on your left, and your taser will be on the right. Your taser will never be on the same side as your dominant hand. So you would obviously have to draw your taser from, for example, say if you are right-handed, you would have to draw that taser from your left side and transfer it to your dominant hand and fire it. In the particular case where she likely could have panicked and just panicked, and that's no excuse. Unfortunately, in law enforcement, if you make a critical mistake like this, there's no, hey, you just sent the email out, you made a mistake, you're going to be, disciplined, you might get yelled at about your boss. This is a situation where somebody lost a life. So you could likely lose your freedom, you're likely going to lose your job. Financially, you're going to be in a trick bag, and all types of other situations as far as mental stress is going to play a serious role in this whole situation, because 9 times out of 10, you're going to go to court criminally, and you're going to be held accountable civilly as well. In this particular case, honestly, it's hard to say how it's going to go, but this isn't the time to be caught up in a situation like that. Pretty much George Floyd set the standard, and they held, Chauvin accountable, which they should have. And just like in this particular case, this is nothing to compare to the Chauvin case, but in this particular case, obviously, in my opinion, The individual did not intend on pulling the service weapon and killing the individual. However, you did it. She did it rather. You know what I'm saying? So all the I can't believe I shot him, or putting her head in her hands, that means absolutely nothing. The fact is, you got a individual now that's deceased, and you can't play that, rewind that. You can't do no rewind. You can't delete it and try it all over again. You got one chance to make that situation right and do the right thing. If you don't, it's no returning. You can't do anything about it. In this particular case, she's going to be held liable, at least civilly. And criminally, it's hard to say how that will go. The bottom line is, whether you meant to do it or not, you did it. And that's not a situation that they should look at lightly. You know what I'm saying? Training a lot of times plays a role in these factors. You have individuals that are often trained. It's my understanding that she had 26 years on. So she wasn't somebody fairly new. But the thing is, you have to look at, what did she do for 26 years? There were people that worked with me that had like 26 years, 27 years. But some people had maybe 3 years on the street. There are people that exist in the departments nationwide. They might have 3 years on the street, but like 24 years in the admin office. I mean, that's kind of messed up in a sense, but they are jobs that, obviously they need to be done. But these individuals a lot of times are not actually on the street on a regular, other than going to the various in-service trainings and going through the qualification, things that are necessary that you have to do, that are mandatory as far as training purposes. But a lot of these individuals don't work overtime or anything that's police related. A lot of times they may work something that's part-time, where they just standing around, maybe some security for a store or something like that, but they're not actually out there policing and going through the motion of dealing with prisoners or dealing with individuals that are actually resistant and being combative and things like that. So if you're not going through that on a regular basis, you just not going to be prepared. Sometimes you just not going to be in practice. So individual kirks out or tells you that they're not going with you, you telling them. It's a whole lot of mistakes that I saw on the scene. They were very lackadaisical when they took the individual out of the car. If you want to place him under arrest, first of all, you shouldn't even told him he was under arrest. Should have told him, step out of the car, we just going to handcuff you for your safety. Once he's handcuffed, then you tell him he's under arrest. They didn't do any of that. They didn't really have a good grip of him. They acted like they were scared or just lackadaisical. I believe it was obviously more than one, but he managed to snatch away, get back in the car, attempt to pull off. He should have been out of the car. He should have been on the ground. Whatever it would have took to get him on the ground, whether it be mace or whatever, whether it would have got on the female, that she just would have been a casualty. But he should have been snatched out of that car and put on that ground. Now, they kind of were lackadaisical. A lot of times with the cameras rolling, nobody wants to put their hands on anybody. But I'd rather than put their hands on them and do something that doesn't look necessarily pretty to somebody on the outside looking in, like your everyday citizens that are, quarterbacking it from the sidelines, looking at it. Oh, they didn't have to snatch him out of the car. I'd rather them do that in a rough or whatever's necessary manner to get him to stop attempting to get back in that vehicle than to go through the situation that they went through. Very, 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 very lackadaisical the way they grabbed him, very lackadaisical. They've just probably assumed that, hey, it's 3 of us or how many of us it was, he's not going to put up any resistance. He's not going to give us no hard way to go. We the police. Wrong, wrong, wrong. They took him for a joke. They took it that he would just pretty much cooperate. Might have been because of his size. Might have been because of his demeanor. He wasn't very rude. He didn't seem, he wasn't belligerent with them or anything like that. So a lot of times, officers often get into a relaxed state of mind. And they did this. And next thing you know, I think they told him he had a warrant, which you tell an individual all this before you get him in cuffs. Lack of training. Poor training. And a lot of times, even when you do have the proper training, it's not always utilized if you're not doing this on a regular basis. Now, it's my understanding she was supposedly training someone, so I don't know. No, she believes she has like 26 years on the street. 26 years as an officer. I won't even say on the street because I don't know how many years she has on the street. And a lot of times you have individuals with an ample amount of time on that are not actually on the street. A lot of times you might have an individual that spent 3 years or maybe less than that on the street, but spent the remainder of the other time in the administrative office or at the Boys and Girls Club, which is no knock on that. But if you're not actually out there policing, you're not gonna have a clue. You're not gonna be really. You're not gonna have those same skills as somebody that's doing it every day. That's going through the whole combative, the whole nonsense of back and forth with individuals that are really putting up resistance. Obviously, in the administrative office, you might run out of toner. You might run out of ink. I mean, something like that. Obviously composing the schedule when you don't have enough personnel that can actually work certain details, that's going to probably be as stressful as it gets for somebody that's working in the administrative office. Now, of course, you got some that engage in overtime and things like that, but a lot of times they work, presidential details and things like that. A lot of times it's not really a whole lot of policing affiliated with it. Like, for example, a detail, you might have a traffic post where you just park there and that's where you are for the time being. If it's a festival, a lot of times you might get out of the scout car and, look around at the parade or whatever. But for the most time, you're blocking traffic and things like that if you are working that type of overtime. Now, I don't know what the situation was with this particular individual, how much actual street time she has. From what I understand, she was supposed to be training, but we know that everybody training shouldn't be trained. You got individuals training, and if I've seen it myself, individuals training, and of course they get an additional compensation, but they should never be training. I've seen individuals, and some of them are actually still in the department right now that actually field training officers, they're FTOs, and they shouldn't be training at all because they've never actually policed. And you've actually got to get into it to really be able to tell somebody and give some real direct and concrete lessons on policing. It's just not straight out of the book. It's a lot of things that they don't tell you in the academy, and that's something else I'll get into, the lack of training, because there's an extreme lack of training, and that's why a lot of the times these situations happen, because these individuals are not used to situations where an individual is going to be resistant. He's going to be combative. Everybody is not going to go with you when you tell them they're under arrest. And like I said, telling somebody they're under arrest before you get them in handcuffs, that's kind of stupid. That's almost like telling somebody, I'm getting ready to swing on you. I mean, you don't want to prepare the person to have a defense. The quickest action is a action, not reaction. You know what I'm saying? You want to go ahead and make let this individual know, hey, look, I'm handcuffing you for your safety. And a lot of times individuals are not, they don't think they're under arrest time. But once you get them in cuffs, then you explain to them, hey, look, you got a warrant for your arrest, and you're going to be transported to the district or wherever for processing, and to explain to them everything that's going on. But to tell them they got a warrant while they sitting in the car before you even get them out of the vehicle, well, what do you think is going to happen? But that's something that a lot of times in the police academies, that particular, as simple as that scenario is, those types of scenarios, they don't even go over in the academy. A lot of times that doesn't happen. And that's one of the problems, and like some I will discuss at a later time, the lack of training. And there is a serious lack of training. I can't speak for every agency, but the majority of agencies, there's a lack of training. And I can definitely speak for the agency that I was a member of for 29 years. It's a lack of training. It's a lot of basics that are missing. They are concentrating on a lot of things that are obviously to cover themselves, and obviously the active shooter. You get that every year and things like that. But there are a lot of things that are missing. Like just simply, what do you do if an individual jumps back in the car or attempts to get back in the car? And they didn't have a good hold of him. They almost, for the most part, just assumed that he's going to cooperate, and he didn't. And it's my understanding, based on what I read, that he was actually stopped for expired stickers on the tags, and also air fresheners hanging from the rearview mirror. Now, with the air fresheners hanging from the mirror, this is just my opinion. I wasn't there, so I'm just gonna give you my opinion. And like I said, I did it for 29 years, so for the most part, I kind of know what I'm talking about. The air freshener situation is a lot of times that's fishing. You are fishing for something, and it's almost, how can I say it? It's borderline profiling. It's borderline profiling. That's when you have nothing else to conduct that traffic stop, and you use that one. Now, in my opinion, based on what I read, they likely saw the air fresheners first and conducted the traffic stop. Now, once the traffic stop was conducted, they realized that the stickers on the tags were no good. I don't think it went the other way around. I really don't. Because for the most part, if you got the stickers that are expired, that's all you need. You don't have to even go into the whole situation about the air fresheners hanging from the rearview mirror. I believe they used that rearview mirror air fresheners originally to make the stop, which is petty. It's in police terminology, we call that fishing. That's when you fishing. That's when you really looking for something and you reaching. At that point, you're borderline profiling, but you're doing it in a way where you'll have something for the most part to fall back on. You know what I'm saying? That's real petty, but a lot of times they got rid of it in DC because officers were using that, and I don't think that's actually a violation in DC now. But in a lot of other jurisdictions, that's considered a violation. Now, I get it if you got like people used to do back in the day, like 1,000 air fresheners on the rear view mirror. That's kind of an obstruction because they're like hanging like almost like a bag of air fresheners all together. If you got like 1,000, of course your car smells good, but that's pushing it. But for the most part, I didn't see that in this vehicle, and likely they used that to do the traffic. Use that as a reason to conduct that traffic stop. Now, like I said, that's considered fishing, and once you do that, you'll see what else you can find. You already got the air freshener, so you're hoping that there'll be some other things wrong as well. In this particular case, the stickers were expired, so they went with that. And upon that, I guess name check revealed that he had a warrant. It's just something, unfortunately, that could have been avoided, of course, if the individual had just complied, and just take the traffic charge. Don't run. They already have your information. You're getting ready to take off. They got your license. They've already ran your name. You already came back wanted. They know where you are. So really, honestly, they could have let him go, but they were in a position where they were so lackadaisical. They didn't snatch him out of the car like they were supposed to. They were very passive with him. And policing isn't pretty. I say it all the time. It's not pretty. So to do it effectively, you may have to slam him on the ground. You may have to grab his hands and be a little coarse with him. That's just part of the job. It's not always pretty, and people get hurt. It's just part of the game. But letting him snatch away from you all, not you all, but I'm referring to the officers, acting like they're scared to put their hands on him because likely the cameras were rolling. A lot of times the cameras make individuals kind of back down and become very passive because they're worried about, well, what is this camera going to show, or maybe I shouldn't do this. The bottom line is, if he had just took that traffic charge 9 times, I believe it was a warrant for maybe marijuana or something. Come on, I mean, it wasn't like I don't think it was a felony warrant. Either way, it's something that wouldn't have put him away for the rest of his life. Why take that chance and run? It was a poor decision on his part as well, and I'm not going to leave that out. And it's unfortunate that he lost his life, but it's unfortunate that you took it upon yourself, being an individual, to take that chance of running from these officers. And a lot of times, these officers are extremely scared. They're hyper. They haven't. A lot of times, they haven't been in the situations that you think they've been in because they are not poor. They are not actually trained for this. These are scenarios that are not introduced into the academy. Some of these scenarios they don't experience until they actually get on the street on the actual traffic stop. Because the academy is so watered down, you can't really do the real role playing where you're actually doing some of these things and calling some of these officers' names. A lot of these officers don't experience the hostile treatment until they get on the street, and they have no idea how to react to it other than use of force, using that service weapon. And this is not the particular case. In this situation, this individual, female officer, made a mistake and drew her service weapon instead of the taser. But the gentleman that took off, it could have been avoided if he had just said, look, okay, y'all got me. Go ahead and let them cuff you. Take that loss. They got you. Take the loss. Don't take off. And it wouldn't have been right to take off even if your girl wasn't in the car. But you're going to take off with your girlfriend in the car 9 times out of 10. Unlike D.C., they got a chase policy. A lot of jurisdictions don't operate like the Metropolitan Police Department. And I get it and I don't get it. But the Metropolitan Police Department, they're not going to chase you for, in most cases, a misdemeanor or depending on how reckless the chase gets, even if it's a felony, depending on the official, the watch commander, whoever's in charge of that chase or working that tour of duty, if it gets too reckless, they'll cut that chase because it's a chance that somebody might lose their life, meaning an officer or a citizen walking across the street, individuals coming through the intersection at 100 miles per hour. You proceeding is green. A lot of times people proceed through a green light and they don't look both ways. I still look both ways even if the light is green, because how many times have you been at a green light or at a red light and your light turned green and within 3 seconds a car came past and blew the red light at 100 miles per hour, but you didn't take off at the exact time your light turned green. That's why a lot of times if you look at the traffic signals, your light won't turn green as soon as that other light turns red. There will be a delay to give others a chance to run the red light, or if they're speeding, it gives you a chance to hold up for a minute. But I think you should do it anyway, whether the traffic signals are on a delay or not. Just pause for a minute and then proceed into that intersection. And unfortunately, you got to treat it like a stop sign. But in this particular case, the gentleman took off. Well, his intent, he was going to take off and get a police. He's basically going to get a police chase. You're going to run, and 9 times out of 10, he would eventually crash. And a lot of times in these particular cases, the passenger ends up losing their life. And 9 times out of 10, she probably wouldn't have a seatbelt on or whatever, or panicking. He's going to try to evade the police. They already know who you are. So, I mean, it's unfortunate, but it's a poor decision on his part to even attempt to run. Could this have been avoided? Absolutely. It could have been avoided. Now, I'm not going to blame the victim because he attempted to run. No matter what, it was a poor decision to attempt to run. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Not to say it all the time. I'm not on the officer side because I did it for 29 years. I'm not pro-police. I'm not pro-citizen. I'm going to call it like I see it. In this particular case, and I say it could have been avoided if the dude had just surrendered. Take the loss. They already know who you are. I could honestly understand it just never stopping. And that wouldn't be right either, but why did you stop? 9 times out of 10, you knew you had the warrant, or maybe he didn't know. Why even stop? But then you decide to take off after they got your driver's license and your information, the tag number. They got all your information. So now you're going to take off after they get you partially out of the car. You try to get back in the car after they got you out of the car. It just wasn't worth it. I mean, and I don't want to see anybody lose their life. regardless, whether it be an officer or whether it be a citizen, regardless, unless it's a situation. Obviously, you got a gun, you're trying to shoot the officer. I mean, what you gonna expect? What do you expect is gonna happen? But in this particular case, this wasn't a wanted individual. He wasn't wanted for murder. I mean, I believe, like I said, it was a marijuana or some meaningless one. It could have been basically something he could have went to court on. They could have dropped it just based on the officer not showing up. And it's just a situation where a lot of times, again, training plays a role. Now, if they had got this individual out of the car the way they should have did, and not lackadaisical, careless and carefree, without grabbing him and really holding on to him, he wouldn't have been able to snatch away. You get him out of that car. And if he tries to pull away, then you put him on the ground and you do whatever you have to do, no matter what it is. I mean, you're going to use the equal amount of force with his resistance. Obviously, you're not going to pull your service weapon out and shoot him for resisting. I mean, in this particular case, that's pretty much what happened. It wasn't intentional. And a lot of people would say, oh, they just shot him because he was black. Nah. I trust me. The individual did not throw her career and her livelihood and freedom away because he was black on video. It's just not that much. It's not that much hatred in the world. Now, again, poor training, being in that situation that you're not normally in. Maybe you're not used to policing on a regular basis, or a lot of times you don't really do those types of traffic stops on a regular basis, or you felt like, oh, it's not a big deal. He's one, he'll cooperate. Or maybe the individuals in the past have cooperated. They have like, okay, officer, you got me. You telling them they under arrest and they're not even handcuffed. Okay, put your hands behind your back. And they put their hands behind their back. In a perfect world, maybe that's how it's been going for them out there. I don't know. But I can't see telling the individual you're under arrest, and then asking them to put their hands behind their back. A lot of times, you tell them, hey, look, right now you're not under arrest. I'm putting you, you can put your handcuffs for your own sake. At that time, they're not under arrest. Once you get them in cuffs, yeah, you're under arrest. You got a warrant. And then it's more of a safe situation for the officer and the individual that's arrested. Because if you tell them before you get them cuffed, 50-50, you might be fighting because you don't know what types of other pending charges. You don't know if this person is on papers for something somewhere else. It might be man, if I go back, I got 15, 20 years. Yeah, I'm going to fight the officer too for the most part. If I'm looking at 15, 20 years, I'll take my chances with an APO, which is assault on police officer, versus him taking me to jail and I'm doing 15, 20 years. Who's not going to fight? You're looking at going to jail 15, 20 years. You're not going to see your family. Things like that. All types of things are going to run across your mind from a criminal aspect. But again, this is an individual that's likely probably hasn't been in that situation. And I would like to know, honestly, how many times has she used her taser? How many times has she been in a situation where she actually tased somebody? Now, if they bring that up and it's a situation, for example, I don't know how long they've had tasers in Minnesota, but say, for example, that was her first time actually using the taser. That says a lot right there. And she didn't use it, but that was her first time. What I'm saying is attempting to use. You have never used it before. And I would like to know how often. I know most agencies go to recertification for the service weapon, meaning the pistol, at least once a year. MPD twice a year. But most agencies do it at least once a year. But I would like to know how often and what does the training consist of for using the taser. Obviously they have to be certified, but I'm not sure how often they do that. How often do they practice situations like that? You know what I'm saying? How often do they have scenarios where you actually have to consistently draw your taser instead of your service weapon? Draw your taser. Obviously, when you go recertification for your weapon, you're constantly drawing your weapon. You're constantly firing. But how often do you go to training where you draw that taser and fire that taser? Obviously, you're not going to be firing the taser at officers, and for the most part. I mean, they had a few officers that obviously you could fire at that volunteer for that type of training. But for the most part, you're not going to be doing that on a regular basis. But I would be curious to find out how often do they actually train where they fire the taser or actually shoot the taser and just have different scenarios where, okay, this is a situation where you would tase, or this is a scenario where you wouldn't tase. There are training a lot of times with the service weapon where you're not actually using the service weapon. You're using a lot of times the rubber bullets, or sometimes small paint pellets and things like that. I'm just wondering, do they do that for the taser as well? Because if they're not doing that same training for the taser, it's pretty obvious why it happened. You don't practice enough with the taser. You are obviously proficient in drawing that service weapon because that's the training you receive every year. Everybody's doing the qualifications for the weapon. So in your mind, in a hostile situation like that, in your mind went directly to that service weapon. But that wasn't the proper use of force. You utilized deadly force for a situation that wasn't warranted. How was he a threat? He's attempted to leave. You actually could have just backed off, let him get in the car and take off. And if they have a vehicular pursuit policy where they can chase, that's a call they'd have to make as far as, do you get behind them, you chase. 9 times out of 10 they're going to chase, because in other jurisdictions they don't have the policy where it's a no chase policy. They're going to get behind you, whether it be traffic or whatever, or if you just simply take off and you don't stop, they're going to stay behind you and they're going to chase you until you crash or until you stop. A lot of jurisdictions, they don't have the policy where, we're not going to chase you for this. They'll chase you for anything. So again, it's a situation I do think it could have been avoided, but unfortunately, it all boils down to it. She shot him. She shot him and he's dead. And the bottom line is, a civil lawsuit and a civil settlement is not going to bring him back. It's not going to bring him back to his loved ones. I believe he had a child. That's somebody that's going to have to, the child is probably unlikely not going to even know who the father is. I believe he has a very young child. The mother has to deal with that. The father, all the loved ones have to deal with this individual being killed over basically a mistake. Now, of course, again, it could have been avoided. It could have been avoided if he had just complied and just surrendered. Let him cuff you. Take the L. Go ahead and just catch the charge. But I'm not going to blame the victim. The bottom line is, the officer made a critical error. And you can't take that back. You can't erase it. You can't delete it. You can't say, well, let's restart this scenario. You can't push reset like on a PlayStation. He's dead. Now you can say taser, 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 and all that stuff she did. You can put your head in your hand and cry and talk about, I shot him. It's unfortunate, but you got to be accountable for that now. You're going to have to be accountable for that. Now, they're saying that she knew that she had her service weapon in her hand, and likely she didn't, because in the heat of the moment, you drawing that weapon, you think you're drawing a taser, but in the heat of the moment, the adrenaline is pumping. And that's a particular situation where, if you're not practicing something on a regular basis and you're not in that situation on a regular basis, these things can happen. The unfortunate part is, this individual lost his life over a mistake. Now, of course, it wasn't intentional, and I would debate anyone that I just know this individual did not come out on whatever date it was and say, you know what, I'm going to kill this dude because he's black. Or I'm going to kill this dude because he's young, or whatever. You know what I'm saying? And you know what? I'm going to show them. I'm going to do it on video. And I'm going to throw my whole life away. I'm going to throw 26 years in law enforcement away. Come on now. That's not what happened. Now, again, lack of training, lack of not practicing and doing this on a regular basis. And although she was training someone, supposedly, that means absolutely nothing. Because I've seen people training that shouldn't be training. Trust me. They, for whatever reason, they're training not because they're proficient at it. A lot of individuals train simply because it's extra money, it's incentives, and things of that nature. It's not something they do because they're really good at it. A lot of times it's a hidden agenda. A lot of times you get out of a lot of assignments. For the most part, if you have a trainee, you're not going to really be doing any reports. The trainee is going to do everything. You're just going to be basically a facilitator. You're going to be just basically giving out instructions. And that's good and bad. You know what I'm saying? It's good if it's something you really want to do and you're really proficient at it and you are giving the young officer or some real good training. But you have some individuals that don't even have enough time on to really know what they're doing. And, because there's such a shortage of FTOs and training officers, they just stick people with anybody. You know what I'm saying? And I've had people with me, for example, that when I was during the later part of my career in the patrol wagon, some individuals had never ridden in the patrol wagon. And I'm like, you've never been in a patrol wagon? It's like, nah. So, and a lot of times I would give them the benefit of the doubt because I'm not going to be hard on them and say, okay, well, you've never been in here, you're going to drive. Nah, I'm not going to set them up for failure and put them in a position where I know they're going to crash and just so that I can get some time off or, I'm not going to do that. That's more of an inconvenience to me to have them crash the police wagon and then, I get injured or this individual gets jammed. The first thing, he just going to come down on me. Well, why did you allow them to drive? Or, were they comfortable driving? Or what did the individual say? The individual writing a statement. Well, I told the field training officer that I wasn't comfortable and I had never driven before. First thing they're going to be like, well, you as a veteran officer, when he told you that, you didn't think that you shouldn't have let him drive, or maybe you should have took him in a parking lot and maybe gave him, some time to practice first, and then I'm gonna be jammed up, improper decisions on my behalf. But again, going back to that situation, there's a big difference in weight in that taser and the Glock. They're totally different weights, but in the heat of the moment, and you panicking, if you scared, and I'm not necessarily gonna say she was scared, but if you panicking and that adrenaline's pumping, you're excited, and you don't normally, if you're not normally in that situation on a regular basis, you grabbed the best thing that was basically at hand, your weapon, your service weapon. In a heated situation like that, you panicked. You grabbed your service weapon. It didn't occur to you that that was not a life-threatening situation. The individual is getting ready to take off. Now, maybe you could get away with that if the individual had a officer in a headlock or something and was trying to drive off or something like that. That wasn't the case. You all failed miserably when you asked him to step out of the car. Nobody grabbed him and in a real tight manner. Nobody really took control of the scene. It was a poor scene, meaning the individuals were very lackadaisical. Maybe they were working overtime. Maybe it was just one of those days where it was just, this is a traffic stop. I'm training somebody. What could happen, No big deal. He's got an air freshener. And again, like I say, that's basically fishing. I do believe, and this is just my opinion, they did stop the individual originally first for that air freshener because they said that it was because of the air freshener hanging from the rearview mirror and expired stickers on the tags. They wouldn't even bring that air freshener up if that wasn't part of the stop. And I believe that was the original cause for the traffic stop. Now, once they obviously got close enough, you are going to notice that other things, because like I said, that's considered fishing. And it's borderline profiling. Officers do use that to profile. That's a fact. We always, the old school vets, old officers, they will always tell you, man, that's petty. We don't do that. That's petty. We ain't going that hard. If you stay behind an individual long enough, they're going to commit a violation. You don't have to do the air freshener thing. The air freshener thing, although a lot of officers probably still do it, depending on if it's considered a violation, that's a sign of desperation. That's when you really trying to stop somebody and you really don't have a reason. When you go to that stage, you really don't have a legitimate reason for a stop, so you're going to do the air freshener thing, which, like I said, the veterans and old timers consider that petty. Now, your younger generation of officers, some of the things they do is a little different. It's acceptable among their generation. But, in our day, you're not doing that. Because a lot of times when you go to court, traffic court, for example, for something like that, the average hearing examiner is going to look like, although that is a violation or was a violation back in the day, going to look like, so you stopped him for one air freshener? Although back in the day it was considered a violation, but they're going to look at that like, what was the real reason? What were you looking for? What are you fishing for? What is a small tree air freshener? Like I said, I can understand if you got 1,000 and it's a whole pack of them obstructing the view or whatever. But one air freshener, one tree, you stopping them for that? That's fishing. Now you are in hope that if you stop them for that, you'll find some other things, maybe some drugs, maybe a gun or things like that. But in our day, we consider that petty. And I do believe, and this is just me, I do believe, like I said before, I'm not for the police, I'm not for the citizen, I'm just for reality. I do believe they originally they conducted a traffic stop and used that air freshener situation as the reason for the stop. I do not believe that individual was stopped for expired stickers. Because if you were stopped for the expired stickers, you got enough right there. You don't even need the air fresh. That's not necessary. You can let that go. He already has expired stickers, expired years on the tags or whatever, and you can work with that. Why even acknowledge the air fresheners unless it's a situation where he became belligerent? And we do know that if you become belligerent with an officer and get an officer hard way to go, a lot of times they'll try to write additional things or try to find additional issues with your vehicle. This wasn't the case. This individual wasn't belligerent, didn't really kirk out or do anything like that. He just attempted to flee once he realized that they were going to place him under arrest. So I know for fact, for the most part, the original traffic stop was for the air freshener, which is, like I said, that's borderline fishing. Well, it is fishing. That's fishing for something, but that's a form of profiling. We call it, what's a good word for it? Actually, it's legal profiling, because what you're doing in the with the traffic stop is actually a violation. The actual air freshener hanging from the rearview mirror is a violation, obviously, in Minnesota, and it was in D.C. as well at one point. But you can legally stop the individual for that because it's a violation. But on the same note, you saw something or you saw somebody in the vehicle that you had to stop, and you think they might be dirty based on what you saw. And an individual might not have done anything, but that's your way of stopping him, or your violation to use as a reason to stop. Now, you don't have necessarily an intention on really pursuing that ticket for the air freshener. You're hoping that you'll find some other things. And a lot of times, in those particular cases, I would read the particular narratives of officers that say that they stopped for a particular traffic violation and ended up arresting an individual for having drugs. Or I read a lot of narratives and things like that because I did a lot of transporting back and forth to the cell block. To the remainder of my career was in the patrol wagon. So I transported a lot, and I read a lot of narratives. And I'm going to tell you, some of those narratives, the individuals would say in the narrative that they observed a particular traffic violation. However, when you conduct a traffic stop and there is a violation, and for example, the individual, say for example, doesn't have a driver's permit, and you arrest them for no permit, no driver's license, you are supposed to write that ticket for the reason you stopped them. A lot of officers wouldn't even write the ticket. Like, for example, if the individual changed lanes without a signal, they wouldn't even write the ticket. Now, you could write a warning ticket to justify that you actually, that was the reason for the stop. But a lot of times, officers wouldn't even write the ticket. And that would lead me to believe, reading some of those narratives, did this individual even change lanes without cause? Did this individual even commit an actual traffic violation? Because if they did, and a good attorney would bring this up, if the individual actually didn't uses turn signal, officer, why is it that you didn't write my client a ticket? And that's a lot. That's a whole something else I'll get into and go into the details of the lack of training. But a lot of times, when you don't have the finances to hire an attorney, and you're dealing with we call them public pretenders, and that's I shouldn't really say that because there's some good public defenders that are trying to make their way up and become good legal representation, attorneys for individuals and try to make it up as for attorneys. But a lot of times when you're using public defenders, they're not gonna go all out for you. They're not going all out for you, and I'm gonna get the same amount of money that I would get for this guy that I'm gonna get for you. So no, we're not going to trial. The quickest thing I'm gonna try to get you to do is take a plea. Now you might plead to something that you didn't even do, but of course, that's a whole nother topic that I'm gonna go into, where individuals don't know the system and don't know the game. Everybody wants to be gangster, but don't nobody really know what it's all about when you get into that system and how they manipulate you. You end up taking a plea to a charge you didn't even commit. And you feel like, okay, well, I'm straight now. I got plead to this misdemeanor, and that's a whole nother topic that I'll eventually go into. But as you continue to take pleas and you think you're getting over, you're back out on the street, eventually your cup will run over. And then that plays a role later in the system when that judge eventually sees your charges stack up, and eventually they're gonna give you some real time. And at that point, it's too late. But that's something that's totally off topic. I'll go into that at another stage. But again, it's an unfortunate situation. I don't know. A lot of people, well, what do you think? Is she gonna be found guilty or not guilty? It's my understanding, if I read it correctly, I believe they have 9 white jurors, and I mean, I'm not going to even pretend like these things don't count. They matter. I mean, this is a situation where she's supposedly be judged by her peers. Now, obviously, these 9 individuals are not police officers, which obviously, if that was the case, then obviously there probably would be a not guilty verdict, because obviously most, not all, most police officers will be sympathetic to a situation like that, even if it's wrong. The bottom line, and I've said it before, regardless of if she didn't intend to do it or not, the bottom line is it happened. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, as I'm going to use this as an example, if you didn't see a child and you strike a child and kill a child, and they found out, basically the speed that you were traveling at that was so excessive, you didn't intend on striking a child, but you were traveling at an excessive speed. Your reckless manner of operating that vehicle likely played a role in that child's death, because you couldn't stop, because you was doing 70 in a 25-mile-per-hour zone. In this particular case, she drew her service weapon instead of her taser. Now, this isn't something, again, that was done intentionally. And then you got people that say, oh, she did that until she wanted to kill him, or they wanted to kill him. Nah, that's not the case. Unfortunately, it happened, and you got to be held accountable for it. There is no other way around it. It happened. You used your service weapon instead of a taser. Now, again, I would like to know, how many times did she actually have any form of training on that taser? How often do they train with the taser? How many times has she actually used it? You know what I'm saying? I would like to know these things, and I'm sure all this stuff will play a role in court. And I tell anybody, if you got the time, you really should follow it. There's a lot of things going on, but you really should follow it, because a lot of times people don't follow these type of things because they feel like, well, if it didn't happen to me, why should I even care about it? It's not me. It's not my loved one. Oh, it could easily be your loved one. It could easily be your loved one. You know what I'm saying? He didn't have to drive off. I honestly believe if he had resisted, which he did resist by attempting to drive off, and he drove off. But what I'm saying is, if they had got him out of the vehicle, and let's turn the scenario, he started resisting when they tried to cuff him and started fighting back. it's likely that in that particular same scenario, she would have pulled that taser out while they were outside of that vehicle and still shot him. Because in a situation like that, if he's actively resisting, that's a scenario where they can use the taser. You can use mace, you can spray him or whatever. In a situation where he's being combative, he's not putting his hands behind his back, things of that nature. You can tase him or use the mace. In that particular situation, likely would have done the same thing. It just would have been extremely close range, and she possibly would have shot one of the other officers that was like on the other side of him. Say, for example, she pulled that weapon out and accidentally pulled the weapon out, of course, instead of her taser, and shot that individual thinking that she was delivering the taser electrical charge to him. That bullet would have traveled through him and likely struck the other officer that was on the side, attempting to gain access and put the individual under control. So honestly, this is a situation, even if he hadn't pulled off, if he had became combative, I think she would have still pulled out what she thought was a taser, which was that service weapon, and did the exact same thing. The only way that this could have been prevented, likely, is if the individual just had said, okay, and comply with all the commands. They ask you out of the car, get out of the car, they start searching you, comply. It's just not worth it. Now, obviously, if they are beating you just from the jump for no reason, whatever, of course, I get being combative and all that. But if they're being belligerent to you verbally, go ahead and let them handcuff you and live to fight another day. What that means is live to make the complaint. I got no problem with individuals doing that. And I've said this before. I have attempted to assist individuals that have come to me and wanted to make complaints. And I've told them, hey, this is what you need to do. If you need, I'll show you how to do it. I'll tell you. Like I said, I'm not for against people being mistreated, whether it be a police or a citizen. On the same note, I'm not for a citizen just being foolish either. But on the same note, if a police mistreating you, you are being verbally abused or profiled, or if you think that it wasn't handled in a professional manner, if you got a complaint, why not make the complaint? It's very simple. You can do it. And if you can't do it, if you don't want assistance, Google it. Everything is on Google for the most part. It's no reason not to do it. I've heard all types of excuses. Man, it's not going to go nowhere. It's not even worth it. Well, you can't complain. You can't complain about the police are doing this or doing that if you won't even take the time to make a complaint. You don't even have to, oh man, I'm not wasting my time going to the district, talk to no official. Why? You just complain that they did this or they did that. But in this particular case, again, it falls back on training. And this is another thing that's a major problem in law enforcement, the lack of training. If some of y'all knew the lack of training that goes on within these law enforcement agencies, you would be really shook up. I mean, I'm talking about basics lack of training. I mean, things that you would assume that they have the training on, they don't. A lot of the training is basically hands-on once they get out of the academy. Some of these things you're just not going to learn in the academy. I get that, but there are some basic things that I'll give you a prime example. With the Metropolitan Police Department, 29 years. Retired June the 8th, 2019. In those 29 years, now think about this. In those 29 years, and I'm just going to use this as a scenario, I have never had a refreshing course on searching. Not one. No refreshing courses on searching. And the reason that's so important, and it should have been something that was gone over yearly, just like obviously you have to qualify yearly with your service web, is because if you don't conduct a proper search, someone down at the cell block may get killed, somebody at your station may get killed, the next officer transport may get killed. That means that if you don't know how to properly search, you may miss that 25 that individual has on his side. If you don't properly search, or that individual has inside of his shoe. There are a lot of individuals that unfortunately pat downs are very, very improperly done. I've gotten so much contraband from arresting officers and giving them back. I say, man, this dude got like 5 or 10 bags of weed in his coin pocket. That's the little pocket that's in your jeans or whatever. A lot of times, this is basic stuff that you're supposed to know and common sense. You go in the coin pocket, but there was so many officers that were so nervous because the individuals complaining, individuals screaming at them. They don't want to touch them. You know what I'm saying? I got to search you to take you down to the cell block. You know, man, they just searched me, man. What you got to search me for? I don't care about all that. I'm gonna search you again. That's the procedure. And when you get down the cell block, the Department of Corrections or whatever gonna search you again. I'll go ahead and give you the heads up. You're gonna be searched for the most part every time you're actually moved to another location or you come out of the cell or you. That's just how it goes. Now, some individuals are just irritable, but most individuals in the system, they already know how it goes. But some of the officers, and I say that a lot of the newer officers are not comfortable searching because the climate, you know, I don't want to touch him like that because he's going to say I'm only doing that because he's this or he's that. You got a job to do. Now, you're not trying to violate him, but the bottom line is if you miss that knife or that razor blade that's in his shoe, then somebody down at the cell block might get their whole face split open. You know what I'm saying? But a lot of officers don't have the proper training and they miss all types of items, basic items. Like I said, that's a whole nother topic that I'm going to. But again, it's a situation that's going to be interesting as you watch this trial. Whether or not I believe there are, what are the charges? First degree manslaughter, second degree manslaughter. I believe those are the charges, and it's not first degree murder because obviously a lot of people are on the sidelines talking all this. She meant to kill him. That's not what happened. Nobody, no way in for hell she did that on video. Now, I'm not saying that that has never happened where individual officers have just kirked out and just lost it. Absolutely. I'm sure that's happened. But in this particular case, we're talking about this particular case. We're not comparing this to George Floyd. It's a totally different situation compared to the George Floyd case. Now, my thing is, it's going to be interesting in what direction it goes in. Because obviously, if this individual is found not guilty, it's going to be a problem. And I understand. Because no matter what, the intent obviously wasn't there. But on the same note, the negligence is there. Now, you didn't mean to do it. That's established. And for the most part, anybody that's watching this knows that for the most part, she didn't mean to do it. But the point is, you did it. You did it. You know what I'm saying? So it's going to be interesting what direction they're going to as far as that's concerned. I was just wondering if she is found not guilty, what's going to happen as far as the city? You know, individuals going to kirk out. It's going to be a riot. I mean, I get it. Because like you said, that person can't get their life back, man. That's somebody's child. He's gone. That's somebody's father or what have you. And the bottom line is, of course, I said it before, if he had just surrendered and, you know, complied. But on the same note, you grabbed your service weapon instead of your taser. So it's something that could have been avoided if likely there was proper training. You all had grabbed this individual from the start and not allowed him to get back in the car when not telling him he's under arrest until you got him handcuffed. It was just a whole lot of lackadaisical, poor training, no control over the actual scene of the traffic stop. It's just, honestly, I'm gonna be honest with you. I think it's a lot of faults there, and I'm not necessarily speaking on the individual that was killed. It's just that's another situation. Training played a role, and the lack of training. You saw it. If you review the video again, they never took control of that scene. Now, maybe they assumed, or in Minnesota, maybe everybody complies. Maybe they're scared of the police down there. A lot of times, police get cocky, they get comfortable, and they feel like, okay, well, you know, for the most part, basically, hey, look, I'm going to give you these handcuffs, put them on, you're under arrest. It's like one of them type of situations. I'm the man, or they have that that type of attitude where he be better than I. He's not gonna do nothing. He's gonna just comply. It doesn't work like that. You don't know what you're gonna get. The most calmest individual, you don't know their state of mind. You can't always see that. And they took this individual light, possibly because he was not a big, rough or rowdy dude, just acting wild. And he was cool. He was calm, and he was not the biggest dude. So they felt like, okay, we got this. Nah, y'all didn't have it at all. Y'all never had control of the scene. It was actually a pathetic. It was a pathetic traffic stop. And again, I say it again. I truly believe that they stopped him originally because of the air freshener. I do not believe that he was stopped because of the stickers. And a lot of people that's law enforcement that's watching like, oh man, what side you on, man? I'm gonna call it like I said, because profiling is real. It's happened. I've been a victim of profiling. I've been in the same situation before I retired. I've been pulled over, and I've had. I remember I was on Kennedy Street. I'm gonna get a scenario, and then I'm gonna go ahead and roll. But again, subscribe, share it with somebody. Thumbs up or thumbs down. It don't matter to me. I'm not doing this for no type of monetizing or anything like that. I'm just doing it to share information and get some feedback. But I had a situation. I was going up Kennedy Street. I don't know if I was going to work or not. Kennedy Street, and Park Police came. I actually had a couple of scenarios where Park Police have stopped me, and they were profiling. I knew this. And when you do it for a living, it's not funny, but it's kind of funny because you do it for a living, you know what they're doing. And it's not because I've done it. It's so much dirt out there when you policing. You don't have to profile. You'll see stuff that's just so obvious. Broken vent windows, things like that alert you when a vehicle's stolen. It's just a lot of things that you will come in contact with. Well, back to the scenario. I'm going up Kennedy Street, and Park Police is coming down Kennedy Street. Now, they make a U-turn. I'm driving a Suburban at the time. And I had tinted windows. The individual got behind me. I knew they were going to stop me. He stopped me. And he pulled me over. Of course, I'm not going to pull no type of police paraphernalia or anything like that. I want to see just what type of gimmick that they're going to come up with. If it's something legit, that I do something wrong, or is one of my rear lights out, something like that, because it could be a legitimate situation. In this particular case, the Park Police officer told me that he stopped me because I didn't have a seatbelt on. Come on now. You saw me with no seatbelt on going up Kennedy Street, and you coming down Kennedy Street. We coming in the same direction, and we pass each other, but somehow you took your eyes off the road in the direction you were going to look through the front of my window to somehow see I didn't have a seatbelt on. I originally thought that they were going to say something about the tinted windows, but he never said anything about the tinted. Matter of fact, I'm not even sure if he had anybody with him. But I knew that was a lie. I knew that was profiling. The windows were tinted, and it was a Suburban. A lot of times, at that time, trucks and tinted windows, that was the thing. A lot of stereotyping, a lot of profiling. You young, you're a black male, you whatever, person of color, and you don't even have to be that. It's just the vehicle itself. I knew I was being profiled, and I listened to it for a minute, and I believe I might have been on my way to work. And then once I said, when I'm a law enforcement officer, I am armed, because that's the first thing you want to let them know, especially if you have a legal firearm. Because I'm not immune from getting killed. Like I said, I'll let anybody know. A lot of people might get offended. I'm still black. Without that uniform on and all on the top, I'm still black. Even though I'm legally able to carry a weapon, I'm still black. And a lot of times, you can say what you want to say. I know for a fact that a lot of times when you deal with individuals that are already paranoid, some of them are afraid, it can go real bad real quick if you make a sudden movement and spark somebody's fear. Then that's a whole nother topic. But again, I was profiled. That's just one time. But it does happen. It does happen. I've had some officers from MPD profile me. So it's not like I'm immune to it. And I never was. And I never looked at it like that. And I never thought that because I was an officer that I would be immune. Because I was an officer. You just don't. You don't ever. Some people believe that, and then they get a rude awakening when they're stopped and treated like trash. It happens. It happens. And I'll go into it a little further. I had some situations in Montgomery County where I actually made an actual complaint, and I was interviewed by Internal Affairs, and they did find the officers who actually I interacted with at fault, and they were disciplined. They would not disclose what type of discipline they faced, but Montgomery County police officers, I did file a actual complaint against them for a profiling situation. And like I said, I'll bring some of those topics up, but again, it's going to be interesting to see whether Kim Potter, I believe that's how it's pronounced, Kim Potter from Minnesota is found guilty or not. Now, do I think she should be found guilty or not guilty? Honestly, you took somebody's life. I mean, I know the intent wasn't there, but when you do something like that, whether or not you meant to do it or not, it's not going to bring that child back by saying that. And I say child because that's somebody's child, somebody's father, somebody's loved one. Regardless, you're not going to be able to bring that individual back by simply saying you didn't mean to do it, or putting your hands in your head in your hands saying, I'm so sorry, I shot him. Yes, you shot him, you killed him. And the bottom line is, you could have killed the young lady beside her. It could have actually went worse than it was. You could have killed her, and not only that, you actually have traumatized her for the rest of her life. Imagine being with your boyfriend or your significant other, and they're killed in your presence. She'll never be the same, and no amount of settlement will fix that situation. Now, of course, there's probably going to be a settlement. The Ben Crumps, the Black Lives Matter, the Al Sharptons, they'll probably pop up soon, or as it gets close to settlement time, because it's going to be, some money. And a lot of people probably get upset that I said I don't care, because I'm going to say whatever that I feel. This is my opinion. Like I said, I'm not linked to the Metropolitan Police Department or any organization. These are just my opinions. Everybody has one. But once it gets closer to ending, you're going to see all these organizations pop out because they're going to smell money. Obviously, no matter what, there will be a settlement. There will be money. But regardless of the money, that's not going to bring the loved one back. That's not going to bring the trauma of the mother or the family members of watching that video of your loved one being executed or dying right there on the scene. You're going to live with that for the rest of your life. No amount of money is going to bring that back. And what good is the money if he can't enjoy it? Something that honestly could have been prevented. And of course, we can start from the beginning and say if he didn't take off. But if the officers had done their job and took control of the scene and grabbed him like they were supposed to, versus just being lackadaisical, and like I said, a lot of police probably watch this video and be like, oh man, this guy's, what side is he on? I'm just keeping it 100. When you tell somebody or you're getting ready to arrest somebody, it can't be no soft touching or no lackadaisical plan, because you don't know how it's going to go. You got to take control of the scene. If it means grabbing that wrist as tight to the point where that person feels like you're about to break their wrist, then you do it. You take control of the scene. I'd rather squeeze somebody's wrist or make them feel uncomfortable, some discomfort, than putting them in a position to fight, and then somehow it turns into a deadly use of force and that individual dies, when it could have been prevented from the start if the officer had just took control of the scene instead of being lackadaisical or scary or whatever the situation was. No matter what it was, I can't say they were scary, but watching the video, regardless, they didn't handle the scene properly. They didn't handle it. And that's just something that's unfortunate, because if they had did their job properly, that wouldn't have happened. Now, I can understand, okay, if it's one officer, that the person can get the best of you. It can get to that point where the individual gets in the car and takes off. But it's multiple officers, and this guy's able to snatch away from you like a child. Like you guys are, come on now. It's it's pathetic. And I'll leave it at that. Hey, look, leave a comment. You got some questions. You don't like what I said, put a thumbs down. If you like what I said, put a thumbs up. Share it with somebody. But it's going to be interesting, and I don't know what direction it'll go in. But honestly, it'll be unfortunate if it's not guilty, because if it's, say for example, it's not guilty on all charges. I can't say which charges should be found guilty, but to be found of not guilty of all charges, that's a slap in the face. Because the bottom line is, even as a former officer myself, just retired, bottom line is you made a very critical mistake, and of course, I'll say it again, it could have been avoided. I'm not necessarily referring to the gentleman if he had just complied. It could have been avoided if the officers had just done what they were supposed to do and take control of that scene. They didn't take control of that scene for whatever reason. I can't say they were scared, wasn't there, but it's pretty obvious if you watch the video, they were never in control of that scene at all. And to them, maybe it was a joke, or maybe, I don't know how they operate in Minnesota. Maybe for the most part, everybody complies with the police. But check the trial out and stay on top of it. I know I am, man. It's going to be interesting. I'll catch y'all next time.